Let's take a look now at what's making headlines in the French papers. Solange Moujon is here with us. Solange, this morning we're going to be starting with the Lebanese foreign minister. He was on a trip to Paris yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. Gebran Bassil has been making the rounds of European capitals to press for the return of former Prime Minister Saad Hariri. Now, in Le Figaro this morning, the Lebanese Prime Minister gave an interview, and he said that Hariri, who resigned from power November 4th from Saudi Arabia, will only be considered free when he actually returns to his country. Now, Hariri himself said on Sunday from Riyadh that he is free, but the foreign minister argues that we're still waiting to actually see that happen. Hariri he says that Hariri is actually still being held by the Saudi regime. Now, in the interview, he says that Hariri's resignation was a complete surprise and shock for himself, for Hariri himself, for actually everyone, including the Lebanese people. Now, La Croix has an article about that shock and surprise, and they're saying that rather than tear the population apart along religious lines and sectarian lines, it's actually brought them together. Now, La Croix says that the resounding message from the Lebanese has been, we want our prime minister back, and that on social media, the calls have sort of taken a humorous tone with fake movie posters and that have headlines saying saving Private Saad rather than saving Private Ryan.
And the French press, Solange, they've been taking a closer look at the diplomatic role that Paris has in relation to all of this.
Exactly. It's going to be a tricky negotiation, but France is in the right place to do it. That's essentially what the right-leaning paper Le Figaro said this morning. It goes into how Emmanuel Macron may discuss Lebanon when he meets today with the head of the United Nations at the climate conference. Now, the article goes into how France has been repositioning itself diplomatically, and it argues that Macron's strategy to parler à tout le monde, or speak to everyone, is working. And it says that it's working for two reasons. First, that Donald Trump is, quote, hot and cold, and his behavior doesn't make him an ideal go-between. And also because Brexit, it says that the British government is preoccupied and can no longer sort of speak for Europe because of Brexit. Now, not all of the French papers think that way. L'Opinion says that even though France has a long and close relationship with Lebanon, that Emmanuel Macron is may not actually get much headway done. He says that when they have an article that says that when Emmanuel Macron met with the Saudi Crown Prince, the Crown Prince essentially said to him, stay out of it, this is a family affair.
And speaking of families, Le Croix has an article today about climate change and the role of families, the role that they play in that.
Exactly. Should we limit the world's population to save the planet? That's the headline this morning in La Croix. They are talking about how Emmanuel Macron is going to the climate summit today, and he'll be joined by other heads of state as well as thousands of activists. Now, the paper goes into how earlier this week, 15,000 scientists signed a petition calling for measures to help limit the world's population by promoting family planning and educating people, especially young girls. Now, La Croix says, now it's important to note that La Croix is actually a Christian paper. So the paper says it's a very sensitive subject, and they call for, quote, responsible procreation. But La Croix says that certain measures, such as abortion and certain forms of birth control, are not acceptable.
But they also talked to another activist who has a very different view on that.
They did. They talked to an activist who said overpopulation is besides the point. That's the argument that Pierre Rabhi puts forth in his op-ed. He calls the overpopulation argument a, quote, imposter. He says that the world would do better to focus on how the planet and how countries are redistributing wealth. He says that every 7 seconds a child in the world dies of hunger, and that to solve that we need to focus on money and on the redistribution of wealth worldwide.
And finally, Solange, we have a rather touching story this morning about how to pass your high school diploma here in France.
Yeah, the bac. The bac is this infamous diploma that French teenagers pass at the end of high school before they go to university. It's a stressful time for them. Libération met with actually adults who decide to pass the bac. Now, if we take a look at the title of the article, it makes reference to a French saying that says, that parents sort of say to impatient teens, pas avant ton bac, passe ton bac d'abord, or pass your diploma and then we'll see. We'll see about the car, we'll see about going out tonight, whatever. But here, Libération has changed that expression to passe ton bac ensuite, or pass your bac afterwards. In this case, after sort of an adult life or a career. Now, Libération tells us the oldest candidate for the diploma last year was 72 years old, and that the average age of the adult candidates was 28. And the paper tells us a story of a few of them. They come from all sort of walks of life, and most say they decided to take the test which is actually quite challenging. They decided to take it to boost their confidence, and in many cases to get a new start on life.
Well, there's hope for all of us, yeah?
Yes.
Solange, thank you very much for that. And Solange will be back with us with a review of the international newspapers a little bit later.